wanted to stop recording. I pressed the wrong button by mistake. All right. So we want our samples to be a simple random sample. That's one thing you can do, okay? Where again, everyone has an equal chance of being selected, okay? Now here's another method. Here's an actual method. You can use what's called a stratified sampling. The idea there is you take the population and you break it up into subgroups that are called strata. And what you can do is take a random sample from each of those subgroups. And the samples you take, okay, those samples from each subgroup, their sizes are proportional to the subgroup. So the bigger the subgroup, the bigger the sample from that subgroup. That's really what I'm trying to say, as I have over here. Now, how do you break up the population, though? Well, there's different ways of doing that. You could use, where they live, that kind of thing. You could also do maybe like gender, religion, race, or government party they're affiliated with, or even, class, like freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, that kind of thing. So if there were more seniors, let's say, you would want your sample from them to be more than the other groups. So that kind of thing. So again, this is when you break it up into subgroups and you take a sample from each subgroup. With cluster sampling, it's a little bit different. This is really more for the geographical one. Here, you're breaking up the population into subgroups, but you're taking some of the subgroups, not all of them. This is something they generally use on a geographical basis. Like if they wanted to, for instance, if New York State, that is, was the entire population, with cluster sampling, you might break up New York State based on maybe counties or something. Different counties in New York State. And then what you can do is take some of those counties, you could choose them randomly, but not all of them, okay? Well, like for instance, in a city, here's another one. You could break up a city by blocks, city blocks that is, and then some of the blocks you can choose as randomly, you could choose them, and then include everyone that lives on that block in the sample, that kind of thing. I know it's a little confusing. There's a big difference here. So I got from this website this here, as you can see. I broke it up. Basically, for stratified sampling, right, you have some from all, some from every subgroup. With cluster sampling, it's all from some of the subgroups. I know there is a difference there. That's why I pointed this out. I wanted to point this out. Okay, so again, we had simple random samples, right? That's one method, okay? With cluster sampling and stratified sampling, those are other methods. There's also what we call systematic sampling. Here, every nth member of the population is chosen to be in the sample, okay? Every nth member. For this, though, you probably would need some kind of list, though. Like if you had a list of all the students here at SUNY Oneonta, you could take starting from the top, you could take every 10th person listed on the list, something like that, for instance. That would be a systematic sampling. Okay? All right. Now, these are some techniques that we saw. Again, you can get a simple random sample, systematic sampling, and cluster sampling or stratified sampling, okay? Those are some techniques you can use to make a sample, okay? Again, for simple random sampling, you can probably use something like a random number generator, something like that, where every number is equally likely. That happens in a simple random sample, remember. But it's not all techniques are good ones to use. There's what they call convenience sampling. This is not good to use. Here, you're just choosing this. You're choosing whoever is convenient to be in the sample. Sometimes you have no choice. Sometimes that's all you can do based on what data is available. But you can go by whoever's convenient. The problem with that, though, is that data could be very biased. The example I gave here was, let's say the city was deciding whether to raise taxes to build a brand new school, right? Okay, so they might want to know what the people living in the city think about this, what their opinions are. So what they do is they send people to get these opinions, but they send them to, say, a senior citizen center. Maybe because it's very easy for them to talk to the senior citizens there. They can go in at any time, I guess. I don't know. But the problem is with that is that that data could be very biased. Now, why is that? Because odds are the senior citizens may not have children or grandchildren even that go to the school. So the problem with that is they may be, very biased. They may not really have an opinion, so to say. So again, convenient sampling, that sometimes that's all you have, but there you're just choosing by whatever's convenient, hence the name. Okay. All right. There's also what they call volunteer response sampling. That's when the people in the sample volunteer. So for instance, what you can have is, let's say, a website that asks readers to give their opinions on taxes. If you go to a website, let's say, and they volunteer to take a survey. The problem with that, though, is you can have people also that have very strong opinions, and it's going to be very biased. That's why. That should not be convenience. That should be volunteer sampling. Another example would be like a pollster, say, that's standing on a street corner and interviews anybody who agrees to talk to them. Let me just get rid of this. So another example of this would be a pollster, again, someone standing on the street corner and they want to interview people. So they interview the first 100 people who volunteer to speak with them. There's bias in there. The people that may not volunteer may have some, you're not getting their opinions. You're leaving a lot of people out. Again, remember, you want it to be representative of the population. Well, what about the people that don't volunteer? That kind of thing. Right? Okay. These are just some examples here, though. So here, this is volunteer response. That's another source of bias. And these are just some examples that we're doing as well. So for instance, we have every 20th soup can is inspected off an assembly line for defects. That would be systematic sampling. Again, we're not just dealing with people here. We're also looking at objects. That's what we're dealing with as well. It's not just for people. Or here's another example where everyone writes their name on a ticket. The tickets are put into a bin, they're mixed up somehow, and they have someone choose a ticket at random. I mean, they could do things like blindfold. Wait, hold on. Sorry, pressed the wrong button. They can blindfold the person or whatever, and the tickets are set up so that there's no way to tell by feeling which ticket is which, that kind of thing. Okay, all the tickets are exactly the same. This would be a simple random sample because each of the tickets are equally likely. That's why. Okay, that would be here. Okay. Okay, good. Okay, all right. Okay, so that's a website, that kind of thing. So that was just some examples here. Here's some other examples. Again, it's good to do some examples. Here, suppose they want to, I guess, learn about the children in a certain neighborhood, right? So what people do is they decide to take a random sample of 5 schools, okay? So in other words, they're classifying the children based on what school they go to. And so to form a sample, 5 schools are chosen randomly, okay? They're chosen randomly, and then all the children from each selected school are included in the sample. So here we have all from some, right? They're not taking all the schools, they're only taking a random sample of 5 schools, right? But from each school selected, they're taking all the children, all from some, as I have written here. Right? As I have written here, all from some, okay? So we have cluster sampling. Or like here's another example with volunteer response. The viewers of a new show, right? they might be asked to vote on the show's website. You know, they might be asked go to the show's website or the company's website that made the show and fill out a survey. Well, that's volunteer response, okay? And again, that's, you know, biased because that may not be representative of the entire population that's watching the show. So that's volunteer response. Okay. Good. All right. Here's another one where, let's say a sample has 25 men and 35 women. This would be stratified though, right? They're breaking up the population by gender, and they're taking some from both genders, right? Some from all, stratified sampling. Okay. Are there any questions so far? I mean, I'm not done yet, but are there any questions so far? Okay. Let me stop the